I know a lot is happening when it comes to the political and social spheres in the country. A few minutes ago, an hour ago, President William Ruto did officiate over a function that 20 judges were sworn in as judges of the High Court. That is something that he has talked about, matters justice and to ensure that they dispense justice the way they should. Of course, there have been a discussion surrounding the president or the executive and the judiciary that does not seem to fizzle out. But away from that, a lot is also happening in the country today. Is when Azimio One Kenya coalition is talking about maandamano, you know, the consultative meetings, that's what they call them. And a lot of people expected the government maybe would have said that they do not want that to happen, because we know what happens when we have maandamanos in Kenya in terms of security, in terms of work, in terms of the economy. But the government is solely committed to ensure that the maandamanos not only are peaceful, but they get the right message. Because according to the Constitution, you have the right to express yourself in regards to what you want to say, in regards to what the government is doing, and more or less in terms of governance. Yesterday, there was the fourth cabinet meeting where some of the measures in terms of drought mitigation and others have been mooted, and the cabinet talked about a number of issues. And for any government official, senior government officials, may it be the president, the deputy, the PS, the CSs, in every function that they officiate, it will culminate into a tree planting session to increase the forest cover and fight the effects of drought that we are currently seeing in the country. Another thing that is currently happening, we have 100 days, almost 100 days of the Kenya Kwanza government. Well, we should take stock on some of the things or some of the milestones they have been able to accomplish, and some of the things that really need to pull up their socks. Talking about days, we also have the 16 days of activism, but on the second hour we'll be tackling that so that we may put things into perspective on how we have been able, or what are some of the milestones we have been able to achieve. Again, good morning. My name is Ben Troy Njue, and Lucy Mwaura is our sign language interpreter for these live newscasts. Remember, we are live from the broadcasting house here in the county of Nairobi, and we're also live on all our social media platforms. First things first, every Kenyan is proud. Talking about World Cup. You remember World Cup iko KBC, and yesterday we had a scintillating match between the Atlas Lion of Morocco and the Great Spain, the 2010 World Cup champions. But after all said and done, Morocco moved to the quarterfinals. Well, they will be facing Portugal, who had an easy game playing against Switzerland yesterday. Remember, World Cup Eco KBC. And for all the matches, remember, all our radio station, all the 64 matches are right there. And we are also beaming all those other matches live on our television channel. It's just some of the things that are happening around the country, but enough said. Let me now bring in my panel of experts, beginning from my immediate left. We have Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan, who is a political analyst and also a politician. Karibu sana mheshimiwa.
Asante sana.
Just next to him we have Gibson Gisore. Gibson Gisore is a governance and leadership expert and also a constitutional lawyer. Karibu sana wakili.
Asante sana Ben.
Good to see you.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. A lot has been happening in the country, though.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm happy to be back.
Gentlemen, karibuni.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Daktari, there's something that I didn't mention in my opening statement, but I think it's quite important. Kenya yesterday didn't conclude the peace talks in regards to the DRC, and our very own former president Uhuru Kenyatta has been spearheading these peace efforts in the region. Mm-hmm. And you also come from a region where we have had conflicts, and so you know conflict firsthand. Why is it so important for those peace talks, and especially for Kenya, to be spearheading them? And not only are they spearheading them, they have boots on the ground, because we did send our soldiers. By the end of November, we did send a group of soldiers to just fortify DRC, which is the biggest country in the East Africa community.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I would like to say good morning to all our viewers. Secondly, you know very well, as you mentioned, we are the hub of East Africa. I mean, Kenya controls the East Africa. Basically in terms of business, in terms of education, in terms of politics even. We influence a lot in our members, East Africa member, and we are a member of East Africa, first and foremost. Secondly, we, quite a number of countries we look at, among the East Africas, they use our ports, and these ports that are the main source of their, goods. And for that reason, Uganda, Congo, all these ones are using South Sudan, they're using our port. So Kenya is important for them in terms of their stability and in terms of their resources and livelihood. Why do we play that role as Kenyans, and what is it that is very much unique with Kenya? Is that we are a peace-loving country. Kenya is a country that loves peace. You know very well, we have conflicts, small conflicts along the border areas, tribal, communities fighting over resources, but we never had conflicts that, people fight for power. Quite often, these countries that you see in the East African region, where there is conflict, is all about power and leadership. Somalia, it has been for the last 2 years. There was also war. This war is going on, not because they love war, but because people are not ready to agree on leadership. Congo is the same. And of course, this other South Sudan had also those processes. Kenya has played very great role in terms of bringing peace to South Sudan. And of course, it is important that we play a very great role. The fact that we have that capacity, the fact that Kenya is also hosting most of these conflict, people affected by these conflicts, it is important for us to offload these people back to their homes, so that we don't carry the burden of their, sustenance. We sustain them because they are using our resources. They're using quite a number of things that we must give them because they ran away from their places. So by creating a peaceful ground for them in their region, that also offloads all those burdens that we are currently carrying. You know very well, the former president has been given that task, and he has played a very great role. I can see he's pushing on, and now he has finished the Ethiopian Region 1 and had several conversations. And of course now he has moved to Congo, and there's something that he mentioned in his speech recently which I liked. I said, Kenya is not the one which is in conflict. It is Congo that is having the problem. So we should be having our meetings in Congo. That's a very positive thing, because you are on the ground, you are able to contextualize and understand what the common person views are in regards to bringing that peace process, other than having special people coming to Nairobi to discuss this peace process, and when they go back there, they will probably have their own views in a different perspective, claiming that whatever was discussed was not consultative. So it's a very good move in the right direction, and that will going to help us in terms of in terms of our economy, in terms of our business, trade. All those things will come up as soon as we establish, peace in those regions that currently depending on us very much effectively. So I tend to think that way, that direction is a direction in the right way.
And Doc, I do concur, because we have had a number of peace talks. We had the South Sudan, we also have had Somalia, all of them being held here. Wakili, karibu sana. An hour ago, President William Ruto did swear in 20 judges, and a lot is happening between the executive and the judiciary, and some people are uncomfortable in regards to that. But the head of state, the day before yesterday at a function at Safari Park, I remember he said that he's never even made a phone call to anyone in the judiciary to tell him or her what to do. But a lot of people are uncomfortable with the dalliance between the executive and the judiciary. But today he has more or less directed the judges to observe the rule of law and to ensure that they dispense justice to Kenyans. The same way he said the day before yesterday that I'm not trying to control the judiciary or even try to go into bed with them, but what I'm trying to do is to ensure that quality services are provided by the third arm of government. We are working in unison with the executive arm and the judiciary. I would like to pick your mind on those sentiments.
Honestly, I would want, Ben, I want to thank Kenyans. I want to say hi to Kenyans. I'm sorry, but the president is the one I want to thank for having the goodwill. You know, the previous regime had a lot of... Are
you speaking as a governance expert or as an advocate?
No, as an advocate, as a use of the courts. I would want to thank the president again, because this has been a challenge. When you go to court and you see your client suffering, you cannot be able to get a date. For example, the labor relations court, we had, if you file a matter today, if somebody fired you and you want to go get your justice, you could be told, okay, the dates we have are for 2026. Do you imagine?
Really?
Yes. But with the bringing in of more judges, then it brings justice closer, because those are things which affect people directly. So, you know, some funny employers could just fire people randomly and tell them go to court, because they know even if you go to court, chances of you getting justice, so it means your case will end up in 2030. So by the president making these steps of swearing the judges immediately they're nominated, I think it's a positive move which we need to welcome. Kenyans are entitled to their reservations that the executive could be going into bed with the judiciary, because of where we're coming from as a country, because we don't trust the government. Nobody trusts the government. The only part where the Kenyans had surety that they would get justice is the judiciary. But when you see them working closely, then you are bound to ask, are these people now on the same wavelength or what? But then I think let's hope that it's for the better. Courts are continuously dispensing justice the way they should. At a point we will feel that now this relationship or this dalliance between the executive and the judiciary is too much. We should be able to stand up and say, now enough of the dalliance. Can you just now be separate wings who are checking each other?
I think why a lot of Kenyans or those who are raising these issues have an issue in how they have seen some cases being folded up in court. You know, you see lack of evidence, or there wasn't sufficient evidence, and the cases just die. This could be one of the reasons why Kenyans are raising that concern.
Yes, that concern is of course something which an ordinary person should be able to be worried about. But from where I stand, Pentry, is the fact that as a lawyer I could be able to see through the cases. Some of the cases were brought to court on a very weak basis, on insinuations, and it's because maybe the former regime felt that they needed to give the Kenyan something, and they just went for whoever they felt was their enemy. They went and they wanted to prosecute them. For the rule of law to work well, we actually expect a system whereby the DPP and the DCI are actually very independent, which they were not in the former. I'm sorry to say that. So they ended up having enemies, or people who were reported to be enemies of the state, being rounded up and being prosecuted. You remember we had the Friday arrests.
Yes. Kamata Friday.
The Kamata Friday, which was basically directed to government officials. If you are deemed like you are not in line with government, you are working maybe in a parastatal and you are rounded up and put inside. That led to some apathy in terms of service provision from these particular officials, because nobody was willing to sign anything for the government. That's why we ended up with the pending bills, which are now disturbing us, because you sign anything, you're told, Appa, you've eaten something. So go inside, you go inside and explain. Then you are fired. As you go to explain, you are fired. So that was the basis of most of these cases. For example, if I can pick one of the cases of the Ishajumo case in Malindi. It It was an election. Aisha Juma didn't shoot anybody. It's the bodyguard who shot somebody. But why would Aisha Juma be a person also being prosecuted directly? And I mean, she should be used as a witness. So eventually, if you go through the process of the court, that case is going to collapse. And then they're still going to blame the judiciary. You know, these people keep releasing people who are accused of murder. But as experts of law, I think it's very important that the DPP to be able to look through the cases which is presenting before the court. But I think it's because of the regime that was and the pressure to work, and you know, he had been appointed and been told you need to prove yourself. Okay. So whatever is forwarded to him, he was also forwarding it to the judiciary, which I think at the end of the day is a big problem. I had issues with it, but you know, for the public, they cannot be able to understand because there is that threshold of a case which you need to have for you to actually present it.
Okay, okay. And you will be looking at the cleanup in the judiciary, the DPP, yes, and the DCI. But Doc, you wanted to
I just wanted to say some few things. You know, Kenyans might view things from a different perspective. But I think what the president is doing, judiciary doesn't work, you know, in a vacuum. They work together, all of them. The important thing is that for the president or the executive, the presidency has to provide the necessary, you know, support, including human resource, logistics, and resources to make sure that judiciary justice is served in Kenya well. For example, people might think that the president is so close to judiciary and probably, as the Wakili said, they are dining. They might be dining together. No, look at it from a different perspective. I come from where I was born, a town called Mandera West, Takaba. You know, since 1970s. That town has been just there. We have another town 165 kilometers in Moyale, which is Moyale, and we have Mandera, which is 230 something kilometers, that we have judiciaries. But every other person who is arrested or commit crimes and is arrested and want to be taken to court, in my own village, Takaba, he has to be transported to either Moyale or to Garissa or to Wajir. All of them significantly more than 100 kilometers. Now, that happened not by choice. It is because judiciary never had enough human resource. Now that we are given human resource, we are trying to talk about again. We are given judges, we are given magistrates, and we are complaining that the government is dining with judiciary. There are quite a number of things that might lead people to think that way because of the reason you have just mentioned. But when you look at it positively, I think it is something, you know, a move in the right direction, and we expect, my request to the judiciary, the Chief Justice, in this platform is that the earliest time possible we should have our courts and magistrate in Takaba, Mandera West, so that our people who are always suffering, who are being kept in jail for 3 days, 4 days in Takaba, and then later, because of lack of transport, then later they are asked to provide transport for them to go to court, and then they are transported to a town that they don't even understand completely. I think it's something that we will request. This move was a move in the right direction, and we request that they should fast track it and drop it down there so that courts are established, justice are served to all Kenyans wherever they are. And I think that way people might think at the moment when these events are happening, they might think there's something fishy. But when reality comes and this work starts and justice is served within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, or 2 months, 3 months, you come to court and your case is finished, I think Kenyans will going to appreciate. And this is something that requires a long process. It's not something that you just start today and then you expect outcome immediately, because it requires establishment of even infrastructure on the ground for you to have courts. But I think the move is in the right direction, and those who think that perhaps the president might use judiciary for his own interest, I don't think that way is not the way the president is thinking.
And it's a good thing you've observed that, because if you have to take 2 or 3 days for you to be taken to court, that, and I know Wakili would really feel that, because In Kenya, you're supposed to be presented in court within 24 hours. You're talking about being placed for a couple of days and then transported about 100 kilometers to be charged somewhere else.
It already violates your rights.
Actually, even to look for a commissioner of oath during election, you know, there are those papers that people usually have to go and stamp. You either come to Nairobi or Wajir or you go to Mandera.
Hundreds of kilometers, and you know your constituency is far end there, and there is no even advocate, there is nothing completely. Even a magistrate, if he was there, then you know he's a commissioner of oath, he will have also still stamp for you. So there are quite a number of things that are positive in terms of the current move, the relationship with the executives. I mean, the judiciary and the executive, they operate together and they are all serving Kenyans. And if you are serving the same common person, then of course there are quite a number of things you need to compare notes and share so that you are able to provide quality services to Kenyans. And what the president is trying to do, President William Ruto is trying to, you know, look at his manifesto, what he has promised Kenyans, and you know, you remember he said justice will be served, judiciary will be independent, judiciaries will have resources. And why he's concentrating on this is because earlier on during the previous government, because he was a deputy, so he was part of the government, there are those issues that you remember the Chief Justice was denied basic running cost in his office, and you know, that was coming from the executive. But now he says no, for the executive to operate very well, we will provide all the necessary things that are required to be in place, and it's dictated by the law. You know, we all look at, we don't look at individuals. For example, you are invited to a function. You, as a head of state, you will come. You will of course talk to Kenyans. But the bottom line is that we are guided by our constitution. We have footprints of things that guides us in each arm of the government. And if we focus ourselves on keenly on those aspects of rule of law that has been put in place, and we concentrate on that, an individual's interest will not come in, because you, as much as you are my friend, if the law says that like this, I'll tell you this is how we are supposed to be manning our things, and this is how the judiciary will going to operate. So I don't think that linkage and working together or coming together and the president officiating functions is of anything in terms of influencing judicial service or rather judiciary's role that they play as an independent entity. And still on the same, Wakili, in most, the Jubilee government was not as vibrant as we have the Kenya Kwanza government in the first almost 100 days. In 100 days, let's say, judiciary has been one of the greatest or the biggest winners in terms of how the Kenya Kwanza government has been. And looking at the judiciary has been one of the biggest winners in terms of the actualization of the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, because these are some of the things that he had already talked about during his campaigns. And something that also talks about the human rights is the maandamanos, or the demonstration that the Azimio has planned. And for the first time ever, we've had the government say, yes, just tell us when, how, and for how long and where
we
that plan for you, and ensure that not tear gases, but we ensure that you have the security that you need. That is something that has not happened in the country for, I don't know, for how long.
Yeah, I think those are very positive things. I think where the Kenya Kwanza government is coming from comes from a place of understanding. What do Kenyans need? You know, the Jubilee government seems to be thinking from a different script, while Kenyans are on a different page. So there was a very big disconnect. And the disadvantage with that, Ben, even if we look at it from a different perspective, as a governance expert, you know, there is a relationship between the rule of law and development. This government seems to be preaching the aspect that we need to develop. You can't develop if you cannot be able to provide basic rule of law tenets to Kenyans. There's no developed country which does not apply justice. I think hardly do you see a dictatorship being a successful regime. So, and it's through enabling the judiciary that you end up having people have faith in the systems. Even an investors first look at what is the rule of law system. If I'm wronged, how do I get my justice so soon? Is it an independent court or not an independent court? Because those are key determinants. So for me to put my money, I need to be sure whether I'm getting into bed with people whom I can trust. You can't trust somebody where you cannot be able to be sure that you will be able to get your justice. That is why, for example, if you go to Southern Sudan, it's quite unfortunate that you will actually find that the system there is not very vibrant in terms of the rule of law. So the investments there, if you put your money there, it's as good as you are risking it. So there's that particular aspect. But in Kenya, we want to develop. We need to be somewhere else. We need to be at the level of the Southern Koreas who are peers during the 70s. So we need to embrace rule of law. If we cannot be able to provide justice for that mamamboga, then we cannot be able to claim that we actually, because we need to move all of us along. We don't provide justice for the people at the high end and then leave justice for the people. What Daktari has raised are very key and disturbing issues. So it's not only in Daktari's area that these challenges are. Do you know that there are some counties which do not have a high court?
Yes.
Up to this day and era, a whole county does not have a high court, does not have even a single judge. So they would depend on maybe the next county to go, and that could be hundreds of kilometers, as Daktari has said. For example, you look at the kind of way things are done. They are living in the Wild West. Some people in this country still think Moi is in power. They don't know that even Moi died long ago after he left. So that is how dark this country, some parts of this country are. So opening up these places, providing the infrastructure, having the courts which are working, providing education, health, and judicial services is part of that process, and enshrining the rights of the people.
The government has said for the Mandamanos, it's a green.
Go ahead, please do it. So that people are like, there's nothing they're hiding. You know, this kind of suspicion which we keep creating. For example, the frost relation between the judiciary and Jubilee government was very funny. That the whole Chief Justice will go to the slopes, the stairs and they start complaining that you people, I'm suffering. I'm not being provided with the basic things that I need to run this particular department. And then the government just shuts the ears and says, that man is confused. He doesn't know what he wants. Instead, they start engaging in a tire of war. You know, that is not very healthy. If an investor was watching that and is like, okay, wait, these people have issues, he cannot be able to put his money here. But this particular government seems to understand that there's a correlation between providing the rule of law for the country and development. That is what is very important, because we need to move faster.
All right. Doc, we are still on the Mandamanos, which we are expecting today, and we do remember in 2007 what happened after the Mandamanos, or the demonstrations that were there after the elections. We remember in 2017 what exactly happened when we had to have handshake after handshake, and that always keeps investors away. This is the first time that the government has said that we are okay with the Mandamanos, but we know, let's just be very honest, how the Mandamanos end up here in Kenya. A lot of people today, just because there are the Mandamanos and the demonstrations, they will close shop. What it does to their pockets, well, we all know what that does. Investors, shops, buildings, everything is quite kept in the cold. But for the first time, the government has allowed that, just to underscore how it is committed maybe to observing the rule of law.
First and foremost, it's your right to demonstrate.
First things first, do you support them? You are a politician.
Yes. They can anyone can demonstrate. It is enshrined in our constitution. And you know, when you demonstrate, you are communicating, or you are passing out message to relevant authorities that you want them to make some changes or take action. But I have a different perspective in terms of how demonstrations should be done. The way a demonstrator has the right to demonstrate, the person who is not interested in any demonstration, or common people who are doing their businesses, have their right as well not to be interfered with. You know, you interfere with my business and day-to-day life, you know, it means you have also infringed my right. So how does other people in other countries, in a more civilized democratic countries, do their demonstration? You go to a common area where you know very well you're not going to interfere with common people's business. Your demonstration team will not going to loot and also, you know, rob other people, innocent Kenyans. So, and if we must do demonstrations, you know, the government is very clear. You do your demonstration, but your demonstrations should not infiltrate into the normal life of other people who are doing their own day-to-day business. What they are trying to communicate is that each and every person has the same right in wherever he is. How do we want it to be done? I don't think the demonstration at the moment that Azimio la Umoja Brigade are arranging is actually, it's premature. It's not yet. What is it that you are talking about? Yes, this government was left a skeleton. The new leadership found nothing. You remember the first time the exchequer, the treasury was crying that they don't have a single money. Then all of a sudden they have started salvaging their, you know, how to restructure their, you know, governance and leadership. You know, they have just appointed, you know, the PSS have just gone into office. CSS just some 2-3 weeks ago that they came into office, and the government is not yet well established. In the fact that they didn't find a soft landing to just establish the structure of the government, that means then if the previous government has left a lot of loopholes or a lot of gaps in terms of establishment of the government and running of the government, then when you come in, within 100 days, there's nothing much you can bring. But there's a positive direction, the policies that they are putting in place. For example, you see how the process that has, you know, the process that was put in place in terms of appointments. You know, the process, president appointed people, allowed vettings to occur. If there were Kenyans who are a bit grieved, they went to court and there were court orders. It was stopped until that was cleared off their way. All those things are, you know, positive things towards, you know, democracy. In that, if you respect the rule of law, if you do the processes and accept how the Constitution demands for you to do, then already you are able to put things in place. So to the demonstrators, we have a lot of pressure. We have droughts that has affected us.
We are post-COVID.
We are post-COVID. We have, you know, a common person cannot even buy you know, a meal a day. And you know, those of us who drive very good cars, those of us who live in a very good place, those of us who have taken our children to other countries to study, I think should not look down upon the common people, the common Kenyans who are struggling every day to make their ends meet. And let's respect them. Forget about all these other things, big things that they are imagining. Small things that we see commonly on our ground is the one that matters to Kenyans. And I will advise the young men who probably will going to be used as demonstrators, that the people who use them for that purpose are not having a long-term you know, opportunities or program for them. They just want to use them and dump them. So my message to them is that you go wake up from your house, go into you know, respective areas of you know, business or work that you do, go and make your future bright. Make for yourself you know, your own income. Nobody will give you anything. You know, the big shots. You know, Raila has been in politics for all those years. Let me tell you one thing. You know, you are in politics for these years, and you are almost now old, and your children are all grown. So whose children do you want to play with on the streets so that they miss their future?
All right.
So I tend to think, to conclude, in terms of the demonstration, the government have provided avenues for them to conduct the demonstration. But can they do their demonstration at Uhuru Park, Can they do it at Nyayo Stadium? They'll be even given so that they communicate and pass the message they want, so that they don't interfere with the normal life of common Kenyans.
Gibson, do you concur with Daktari? He has stated it very well that indeed it's true, it is enshrined in the Constitution. You have the right to demonstrate, but he has noted a number of pertinent issues. One is that we are just from an election. Secondly, we post-COVID. Another thing is that every election year, the economy is polarized. And now, because of the Russia-Ukraine war and a number of factors, the economies of so many countries are polarized. And another pertinent issue is that the Jubilee, the Kenya Kwanza government has just taken over from Jubilee, what, less than 100 days. So it is premature in as much as it is their right. It is premature, and noted that, yes, it's a thin-veiled looting spree, if you ask me, because we've had them before, and we have seen tear gases, we've seen building closed, we've seen looting. So I'd like to pick your mind on that.
I fully agree with what Dr. has said, because in this country, people they assume that their rights are more superior than the others. The government itself has been beating demonstrators and charging them, and also tear gassing them, which is wrong. Especially if somebody is actually picketing or demonstrating for good causes. You need to facilitate it, because it's a constitutional right that the government needs to facilitate these people. So they fail on that part. The second part is on the demonstrators. When you're demonstrating, kindly keep to yourself. Demonstrate and communicate the message you're demonstrating. Because when you go start looting, when you go start beating people up, then now you are affecting other people's rights. Because much as it's your constitutional rights to demonstrate, it does not also mean that you go affect other people's rights who are doing their business and causing commotion and chaos. The whole essence of demonstration in Kenya, or what we need to do as a country, is to demystify the whole aspect of demonstration. That if you want to demonstrate, go demonstrate, but do not injure other people's rights. Once the government can be able to ensure that, or once the demonstrators can actually be told that you cannot be able to impede other people's rights, then it will be fully understood that demonstrations are for a good cause, and we shouldn't be worried that somebody is demonstrating if they are not going to affect any of other people's rights who are not a part of the demonstration. The aspect where if demonstrators are passing through your streets and they are looting your shops or beating people down, that is what we need to do away with. And we need to hold the people, the initiators of this demonstration, accountable for their flock. Because this is their flock. You brought these people to the street. Kindly ensure that they stick with the basic minimums of demonstration. That is when we can be able to exercise your right peacefully. And then also the people to also continue doing business peacefully without being affected. That is when we can be able to have a developed country where we don't have any suspicion. Where I suspect that, there will be a demonstration that then I have to sit back at home, and that's a bad thing. That's what we need to work around, to be able to understand that these things are correlated, and we need to live in peace and harmony.
More or less the way the word freedom, we have free and domain, you know? Your rights end as soon as mine begin.
Yes, your right of demonstration does end at some point, and somebody's right of doing business and living peacefully and to do his entrepreneurship peacefully also start there. So you don't go and mix these things so that you end up affecting people.
Yes, indeed, the Kenya Kwanza government has not hit 100 days yet. Yesterday they had the cabinet meeting at State House, Nairobi, and you had an opportunity to just peruse what they talked about and some of the resolutions that they agreed. First and foremost, they did agree that all functions, president, cabinet secretary, PSs, and all senior government officials, at the end of the function, there will be a tree planting session that is geared towards increasing the forest cover in the country and fight the climate change that we are always and every day talking about. Doc, I would like to pick your mind on the 100 days or less than 100 days that the Kenya Kwanza government has been in power. And why I'm doing this is because as you see, Azimio don't even want to wait for 100 days to see how the government is. They just want to start demonstration in regards to showing how they are disgruntled by what the government is doing. I'd like to pick your mind on that.
Right, thank you very much. I think the cabinet meeting and of course the resolutions they made, when you look at it very keenly, of course it is in line with the manifesto that they have been pushing on during the campaign times. And it is of important for the president to have his manifesto materialize. If not so, then of course it will be difficult for him to bring another manifesto for 2027. So the best thing as a politician does is to make sure that whatever you have said during your campaigns as your manifesto, one way or another should materialize in the process of your leadership. Having said that, one important thing that the cabinet concluded was that we know globally we are affected by the climate change. We know we have a lot of soil erosion. We know there are vegetations who have completely become extinct in some areas. I know in my own home area, it's a dry now, it's a desert actually. It used to be called arid, arid and semi-arid areas. Now it's a total desert because when there are no single trees and there are sandstorms every other day, and the heat there goes up to 45, 50 degrees at the rise time, that means basically we have been affected by the climate change. Much of the climate change or effect is of human making. We of course destroyed all those vegetations, and perhaps when the government came out and say, every other events that we do, we must plant trees. That's a positive thing. But there are a number of challenges. Particularly, I would like to point out and reference most of the things. In the area I come from, I come from northern Kenya, and that is where drought often hits hard, every other time. I think as much as we will want to plant trees, if today we organize an event in Mandera West, Takaba, or Mandera at large, or Wajir or Garissa or Turkana, and all ministers or cabinet secretaries, the president comes, and they plant a tree. We have, the soil is already dead. There is no nutrients in the soil. There's no water, and there's no, sustainability of that plant to grow. So I think the best thing we will have looked at is we categorize in areas where there are water, where you can plant trees, and areas where we must provide, water. So that we are able to, water harvesting, we create dams so that we are able to get water to plant trees. Other than that, if we talk of planting trees, it will be very difficult for us. The other thing is that within the 100 days that the government has operated, there's one thing. The government has a positive thinking and a positive direction for the last 100 days. And we can see there is progress towards, providing, services. And an example is already you are seeing 100 judges have been sworn in very short time. You see the president is doing every other day launching events that we know will make significant progress in terms of changing the life of a common Kenyan. So I think the 100-day means the way they have put their structures in place, the way policies that they want to use in ensuring that Kenyans get the best services that they have put in place is actually a very positive one. So that positive thinking itself is an achievement for the 100 days. So I think I'll perhaps take it that way, that as much has not been done because of other factors that we all know, including resources, there's a positive thinking, there's a positive setup and a layout and policies that we know very well. If it is, those policies are used and go, and utilized very well, they will going to give us a positive change towards good Kenya.
Wakili, they have been in office for less than 100 days. There was a fourth cabinet meeting and a number of issues other than because of course there is hunger and climate change that we are fighting. So that was quite from the bulk of what they discussed yesterday. And still on the same, they talked about a number. They had actually 7 pages of what they deliberated on, including sports, where they said that they're going to be looking at the Harambee Stars and the Starlets as well. So there's a huge package of goodies coming our way in the next couple of days, and of course a number of issues, including how to check on imports to ensure that they meet the quality standards that we. But in a nutshell, what would you say in terms of how the government has been conducting itself, having the fourth cabinet meeting and less than 100 days in office?
I think that's a positive move on the part of the government. You know, government business is transacted, especially on the policy level, is transacted at cabinet. You know, there's no policy which can go through if the cabinet has not sat and given it a go ahead. Once it gives it a go ahead, that's also the policy aspect has the financing aspect. It means they have already discussed with the minister responsible how the funding will be able to be provided. For example, if we take the example you've taken of sports, I'm sure Ababu Namombe is a very able guy, so he's my friend, and I'm sure he's going to deliver in that particular, because the reason why I say I have confidence he's going to deliver, because he's the one who came up with the sports bill. The sports bill, which later became a sports act, which has been bringing problems where the particular departments which are involved in various sectors of the sports have not been able to comply. You know, the major issues we have with sports is that some of these sports organizations do not want to comply or do elections in the manner in which the Sports Act actually anticipates. So being the minister in charge, I think I have faith that he's going to ensure that. So if that was one of the things which was discussed, because I'm not so privy of what they discussed, but in a nutshell we have highlighted, I expect that they should be able to get enough funding. We had a huge cry the other day, I think last week, when our 7-a-side team was going to Dubai, and this case was saying we've not been paid for 3 months. We're being chased out of our houses. We cannot be able to take our kids to school. And we are playing for the national team, which they've been doing a good job in terms of marketing Kenya and even delivering medals. I think with that low morale of late is because they have not been given the funding. That's why the results have not been very positive. This is one team which can really do a lot of things for Kenya. So if we can be able to look into these issues of how we brand ourselves, because they are our ambassadors. They actually do a lot of works of marketing Kenya more than the ambassadors, because I don't think you know the ambassador to Dubai, do you?
No.
But when the Stars plays in Dubai,
or even the Sevens,
when they play, the whole world is watching.
Yes.
There's a way sports plays a key role in terms of marketing. So if this is the way the government wants to move, I really wish that they do it in the right way, in the right manner, and we achieve results. Why are we not at the World Cup? Why are we banned instead of participating in the World Cup at the moment?
And still on less than 100 days that have been in office, and one of the things that has come out clearly is the Cherera 4. I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but I think their goose has already been cooked. It's just waiting for the serving, because you see 2 have already resigned, 2 to go. Right?
Yes.
And if at all they are ejected from the commission, what it means is that we have 3 commissioners who their tenure is coming to an end. It's a good thing we have a lawyer on the panel. What if something happens to one of the 3? And remember, they are all getting out of office. Could we be staring at a constitutional crisis based on what is happening? We still have by-elections still to be conducted as well. And we know very well the recruitment process of commissioners is quite a tiresome and tedious process.
I guess, Bentry, you're right. If anything happens to any of the commissioners now, we are sitting on the edge, and we are going to have a constitutional crisis. But also, we're also looking at a perspective whereby people are not comfortable, or a section of Kenyans, let me put it, a section of Kenyans are uncomfortable with the way the last election was conducted. And we cannot just sweep it under the rug and say, you know, it's all okay. You know, elections are very emotive. things in Kenya, which of course describes of who we are as Kenyans. So if there is something we feel needs to be addressed, we better address it because it is the right time. Because if we wait, the other challenge is, you know, the last election, the issue of appointing the four who are now being investigated happened so late in the day, while they could have done that earlier, so that there's a lot of gelling and mixing, so that they can be able to be acting as one body. So part of the reason of us having whatever we had in the last election is because of they were like two sides in the commission. So if we can be able to have these people earlier, they start working from the word go, then we will be able to be sitting at a better place, or we will be able to have identified any issues that come in the process and be able to handle before 2027. That is on the first part. The second aspect I would want to raise is the aspect of the Chebukati leaving and the other commissioners. So once they leave, these others are being investigated, we are likely to have a new commission. And the aspect of time is of essence. Once we have this aspect of time of essence, because we need to have by-elections running at any point, so we need a competent team in place. I think where the government or the parliament and the government is coming from is that let's investigate these people at the earliest opportunity, let them pay way. If they have to pay way, or if they are found not to be guilty, let them be able to be served, so that we put new people on board, so that these people start working, we close this chapter and move on.
And when we come back, because we have to take a short commercial break, the question is, two have already resigned, and two are still in the office. Does the tribunal still continue with the work?
Yes, it has to continue. Why not said? Because we need to go to, we have to know the truth. The tribunal is to bring out the truth.
Okay, we will be getting back and also wrapping up the first hour. Indeed, the second hour we'll be talking about the 16 days of activism and against gender-based violence, and a lot has been done. We'll be hosting policy and advocacy manager at one of the NGOs that we have, who have been key in ensuring that we fight the vice of SGBV, sexual and gender-based violence. That's a bit later, but for now, let's take a quick break. Welcome back to KBC News Check. Thank you so much for joining us. We are also live on all our social media platforms. Just in case you joined us, we are looking at the political scene and the social scene in the country here, and I'm joined by two experts, a leadership and governance expert. On my immediate left, we have Dr. Isaac Hassan, who is a political scientist and also a politician, and just next to him we have Gibson. And what could happen? Could they have, or could they, the government or anyone, institute any criminal charges against them, if at all they are found culpable?
Yes, it's very possible for government to actually institute criminal charges at the point where it's deemed that these people were culpable for some electoral offences. We have a very strict Electoral Offences Act, which also binds even the commissioners. So nobody is above the law. So if they are actually found that they are participated.
But Wakili, the Elections Act, we've never had anybody who has been charged because of election malpractices, and we have seen them in court, or anybody who we've never had a conviction in relations to election malpractices.
We have. I know of two people who are serving time, who are election officials. I don't want to mention the areas.
I'm talking about the bigger scene, because elections in Kenya have always been disputed. In 2007, what happened? We've never had a conviction on the same. We're looking at top there, not the returning officers at polling stations. And let's go for the bush itself.
Call the big fish.
Let's go the big
now
fish.
The challenge normally, I think, is because the people on the ground are the people who do the handiwork, and the handiwork is where you can be able to get cogent evidence which you can put somebody inside.
Okay.
So the others is through insinuation, which does not maybe hold enough evidence to be able to actually move somebody on. But if the Supreme Court, for example, decided, you see how the petition was filed, the Azimio's petition was like the chairman was culpable. If the Supreme Court did actually find him culpable, then the DPP should have been able to take up the judgment and find the findings of the judgment and then be able to prosecute him through the courts now, through the normal court system. The same as the same as to these four. If the tribunal, the Tribunal of Parliament now is sitting as a quasi-judicial body. So whatever decision they find or whatever recommendations they make will actually be binding on the DPP to actually pick those recommendations and be able to prosecute somebody. So that is how serious it is. If they actually found that there were mistakes which were conducted, these mistakes were actually outside the purview of what it is that they are supposed to do, then they are held personally responsible. That's how our law is now. Partly, to some extent, there is also some goodwill issue. But now I think if the tribunal does find, then I think their goose will be cooked. The aspect of which you raised earlier, that now two have resigned, the other two remaining sitting tight, the tribunal will have to do its job. Even if they have resigned still, their responsibility was collective. So nothing stops the tribunal from actually revisiting whatever the roles of these two who have resigned. Even if they all resigned, the tribunal has a mandate to actually summon them and be able to cross-examine them. They can be represented by their lawyers. They can be able to be represented by whoever they want, or they can show up in person. They give their part of the story, because the key role of the tribunal is to bring the truth to Kenyans. That's what they are being paid for, as to what happened, because we don't want to serve another incident. For the next election, we don't want to see such an incident happening, playing itself, just because we didn't clear this one. So elections being something which is core and at the center of Kenyahood, I think it's imperative upon us to actually know the truth, seal those loopholes. We have done a good job from 2007 to actually be able to seal the loopholes in our election malpractice areas, and this should be a step closer to achieving that.
All right, let's look at it on a layman's point of view. These are the two who have resigned, and these are the two who have decided to stay put. What was the rationale of resigning, or how are these two cases different from each other?
Of the two resigning and the two remaining. It's
because if at all the tribunal is going to...
It's a personal decision. Bentro, you could be coming from whatever you are made of is different from what I'm made of. So there are people who can be able to take so much heat.
In short, there are no soft landing for those who decided to resign.
Yes, there's no soft landing. The only other option could have been, if they all resigned, then the work could have been easier. They could have just been summoned to highlight. But the aspect of recommending them to be removed from office or to be charged would not have been a big thing. But now, you see, if somebody has really asked for forgiveness and is lying down, you don't walk on him.
Yes.
So you can say, okay, you are forgiven, you've admitted your mistakes. But if somebody really puts his head up and says, I'm not guilty, you will need to bring all the evidence, you need to do that. The tribunal will need to look for this evidence and try them and be able to determine. If they find that indeed there is a lot of gray areas as to their responsibility and culpability, then they can be able to recommend that these people, let them be fired first, and then secondly, let them also be able to face the tribunal, or let them just be fired because of whatever the tribunal comes up. I don't know what their TORs, terms of reference are. But I think those should be what those are some of the things we should be expecting from the tribunal.
When you talk about IEBC or any electoral body that we've had since the time of Kevuito, the ECK, we've always had the two parts. Now we have the tribunal that is investigating the four, but we've always had politics, Daktari. We've always had politics come in. In 2007, ECK, Electoral Commission, led by Kivuito, we said Kivuito must do what?
Go.
Must go. And indeed, he did that. Then we went to Interim Independent Electoral Commission of Isaac Hassan. Incidentally, you share the same name. But no relations whatsoever. We said Isaac must do what? Must go. And the commission did go. Then into 2017, we also said Chebukati needs to go, and even back then, Raila didn't go back to the repeat poll, saying that if at all we're going to election, this guy has to go. Now we are doing the same thing. These people must go, but this time round they really need to go because they really need to go because Parliament has instituted the tribunal. They had the JILAC, which recommended their probe. Two have already resigned. The leader of majority said these people need to go. This is now the political side. I would like to pick your mind on the same. We are always having commissions that we want them to go. First things first. Let's first of all deal with the Cherera 4.
Right, thank you very much. Now, I would like Kenyans to benefit from this because I see Wakili has put it very well, that the tribunal will continue regardless of whether you resign or not. So why is that important? I like people to pick this very well. When you and your employer get a bit of disconnect and issues of disciplinary comes in, you have two options and they should be timely. Option of exiting the field so that you and the institution that employs you have, regardless of whatever you have done, have, disconnected because you decided to move out, to exit. And that's the best time that people always say as a good, because the institution will not going to reference you for what you have done for future employment. But when you become adamant, you wait until the institution now constitute their disciplinary action. Or for this case now, the tribunal has been put in place because for that, for the 4, this was the way to go. Then regardless of whether you resign or not, you have been pressurized because you are facing the panel. And now you are proving that actually what you are being accused for, perhaps this element of exposure that is already there. And therefore, the best thing, the Cherera 2, the ones who have resigned, the ones who left, they didn't do it timely. And that's why Wakili is saying, regardless of whether they resign or not, they have to face the tribunal. Perhaps he knows he's the expert. Wakili unajua he's the expert, so he's going to be giving us details on the rationale of why they should not be just left out, and they have to face the tribunal. And one of the things he mentioned is basically the fact that we want to know what transpired, which is very good for Kenyans, because you reached that level when Kenyans must demand for what is it that you have done, so that we are able to be comfortable with you, so that we don't repeat the same. So this is one. The issue of politicians come the referee. The most unfortunate thing in the Electoral Commission, or rather being a referee for politicians, is you are always on the victim side. If you don't win, then of course the referee is always wrong. That has been a tradition historically when you look at it very well. But since the time the IEBC was formed, the pressure has been a bit low, because we are able to contain and protected by the Constitution. But look at this aspect of every other time a politician particularly the national politics, the presidency. Once they don't carry the day, then they know something has been played. And who is the player? Is IBC officials, which is not the case. In any case, if you lose, you must accept that you have lost. There was no need of going to Supreme Court to, appeal against the decision of IBC when President William Ruto was announced as president-elect.
Yes.
Because you remember, sometimes it's good for you to play your cards early enough so that when you come forefront here, you don't have to, embarrass yourself. Because why I'm saying that is that we knew the process was very clean, and people have played their game very well in terms of ensuring that their votes go to the right, they secure their votes in every polling station. In the tallying center, there's nothing much. I mean, the tallying center is just adding up arithmetics, unless, as we saw, there was a challenge in mathematics, and I guess one of the IBC commissioners should be a statistician in future, so that he's the one who looks at issues of arithmetics, because basic arithmetics of additions shouldn't be an issue for a common learned person. But having said that, I think we must find out a way in which these common issues of blaming the referee all the time should cease, and we must put something in place. Otherwise, every other time commission comes on board, election is done, these commissions becomes victims, and it is not right. So for me, I look at it from two perspectives. One, we must put in place, measures that can protect these commissioners, regardless of whatever outcome comes out. Then you should not blame the commissioners. Secondly, our politicians should learn to say, I have been defeated. Life is going on well. I'll go back to my people, voters, next time, so that they elect me.
Would you support a situation that says that all the 4 commissioners, the Cherera 4, exits office? Would you support that?
At the moment, yes, because for them, they have, their rules. As an employee, there is code of conduct. There's something that you have boundaries. There's no way you can become an activist if you're an employee of someone.
Yes, the leadership.
Exactly. So leadership integrity, because you are supposed to keep most of the things within, actually all of the things within your employer's territory, confidential, and you signed for it. So, and you swear, before it. So for them, they became activists. It's only that the Constitution does not allow them to be discharged immediately. But a common employee will have been discharged immediately to leave because he has crossed the boundaries. For them to be discharged, it means then we are supposed to put some measures that constituting a tribunal. That way is the only way that they exit in. But ideally, if I was the one to decide on their employment status, the moment you have violated the code of conduct, you exit. Ideally, you have no space in that institution, because the institution, you are the institution. If you don't protect the institution, then definitely means you are the problem, and by any means you have not followed what was supposed to be in order. So that way they should exit on that aspect of employer and employees rules and regulations. I don't know what Wakili will going to say in terms of the legal aspect of it, but in terms of employment, it's that way. They should.
And Wakili, I would like to pick your mind on this notion, because looking at ECK all the way till 2022, the day that we are talking today, commissioners, the IEBC work, including the CEO, remember Chiloba had to go. If we look at the electoral body, since for the last almost 20 years, we've always wanted people to go. If at all the 4 go, and remember the 3 now will exit office next month, what it is saying that we have an opportunity to have a clean and lean electoral body. But unfortunately, I'm quite sure there will be concerns raised maybe in 2027 by the losers who say, no, the commission, because the Electoral Commission has come under fire each and every election cycle. What could be the remedy? You remember, the Apex Court pronounced itself and said, you need to put your house in order.
Yes. Yes, I think, Bentro, I've just remembered, I saw somewhere that the former CEO and one of the officials, I think, of the former IBC, I don't know, ECK, Oswago, I think was...
Oswago, the chicken gets scandal.
You mentioned earlier that no big fish has been there. Just to clear the air, what is happening.
Actually, it was yesterday, the day before yesterday.
Time, but the wheels of justice are grinding. However slow, but at least you never know. In 2027, we'll find somebody being prosecuted. But now we have enough judges, I'm sure you should be able to get it before that, if there is somebody who is guilty. So I think we should have faith in the judiciary, and the judiciary has been very magnanimous that these people, the election needs to be run in a particular manner. And we have also been able to put in place various laws and policies of running an election. You know, in some parts of this country, I think Kenyans are a distrusting lot. If you go to elections in other places, you will wonder. People do not care. I mean, whoever is declared is declared. Somebody is declared and feels he is aggrieved, he wants his justice there, and then goes to his home, gets a gun, shoots twice, thrice. They tell you it's actually you won. And he's declared, and nothing happens. Even if he had been declared with the loser. So Kenya, we are past that. We are at a place where we need to trust our system and entrench the system so that whoever feels aggrieved needs to rush to court quickly. We have even made the time to be shorter so that you can be able to do this case within 3 months after election. You should be able to have your justice. If it's going to an election, back to an election, then you go back to an election. So those are some of we've made a lot of progress. We need to appreciate that. So, but there is still some few things which you need to put in order. So once we do that, and the Kenyans actually rally around it, the issue is Kenyans need to buy this goodwill. That indeed, almost in this election, we almost there till the Cherera 4 happened. That's when the distrust actually was entrenched. But remember, people had started conceding, saying, I think if they have said I've been beaten, I'm beaten. We don't need to wait for the final result. I think you see, that is a positive thing. It has never happened in Kenya. Now, if we be able to deal with this Cherera issue, be able to jump this particular hurdle and move to a better, get new officials in place in a transparent and fair manner, people who can be trusted. They conduct some few elections, which we will be able to test them. Once they are tested, tried and tested, then we dedicate them to the 2027 elections, which will be, of course, holding them at a higher pedestal. And we will have tested them. I don't think we will have any much problem. The trust in the process will have been entrenched. That is, I think, something which we need to push for. So sometimes I think, also need to cut ourselves some slack, that we indeed should trust the system. But then, you know, as an electorate, you cannot trust the system fully. You also need to be woke. If you're not woke, then things can happen very fast, and you will find yourself to have lost unfairly, or in a process where you feel that justice was not done to you.
And we need to do that because looking at Chebukati has weathered the storm. In 2017, there were calls for him to get out of office, but he stayed put. This year, we saw the fracas that were at Bomas, but he stayed put.
Yes,
and
he stayed put.
Unfortunately, we might not get a commissioner or a chairman who has such grit. Yes, to sit through and to absorb all that shock. Should we have some protection in the office? Because if we have somebody who just see the kitchen is on fire and just gets out of the kitchen, then we will be having a lot of issues in terms of the leadership of the electoral body.
One of the reasons I think I also need this commissioners gone is because they cannot be able to withstand the heat in the kitchen. You see, they are already budging so soon, they are resigning. well, if they believe that they were on the right, especially if you read Cherera letter, she's trying to say that she's misunderstood, people mistook whatever she did to be the wrong thing. That is why you need to come and tell us the truth in the tribunal. Appear. She was given a chance to appear even before parliamentary committee to explain herself. She didn't. She opted to bolt. Or for some reason, whether she received good advice or not, she should have actually appeared, so that her piece of the story, because we don't know. Up to now, we don't know. That is what we know. We need to know at Kenya, so that we make a fair judgment, so that as we're going to elect new people or to put new people into office, we know the kind of qualities we need and what kind of if it's law which needs to be changed to enable these people to be comfortable. There's the issue you have raised of Chebukati receiving some blows and actually ending up delivering the results. How do we avoid this in future? So those are some of the things. Those are some of the things we need to clear and be able to have it sorted once and for all, so that we move as one Kenya. Because election can polarize the whole entire system. Yes.
Doc, the day before yesterday and yesterday, the Kenya Kwanza divide had their PGM, the parliamentary group meeting, and a number of issues were raised. Maybe we can touch on some of them. And I remember the president who was in the afternoon session. In his speech, he told the Kenya Kwanza MPs, excuse me, he said, don't be swallowed or don't cross over to the Azimio or to the other divide. Kindly just be here with us. Let's work this together. What do you think he said that? And he has already the numbers. He has the numbers. I don't know which political divide you are in, the Azimio or the Kenya Kwanza. But he did say that. Something that maybe in less than 100 days, he says that kindly, please, don't be swayed. Those guys are not in government. He already plucked some of the MPs from the Azimio divide, and now they are in the Kenya Kwanza divide, and some of them actually come from your region. But he said don't be swayed by the opposition. Let's stay firm, let's true to cause, so that we may actualize the Kenya Kwanza agenda.
No, I think this is my opinion. The president was pulling things from the perspective of what had transpired during the appointment or election of Yala, East African Legislative Assembly. My thinking, where, of course, Kenya Kwanza parliamentarians, some of them voted in for Azimio parliamentarians' preference. That way means then, I think, if they can, without having a consultative agreement, just move to the other side and vote in someone whom they think, someone whom they think that was in Azimio, then that means then I think the president think that they have developed a bit of laxity in terms of maintaining their core status. The other thing is that I think there was a bit of members of parliament speaking, on behalf of Azimio. I mean, their conversation was towards the Azimio, and in essence they were supposed to be in Kenya Kwanza, and that way means you realize that if someone is talking on behalf of Azimio and he was perhaps in Kenya Kwanza, then there is a problem. There's this. So I think that he's trying to tell them that, hey, we are just at the beginning. Things are to come. There are a lot of things that are to come. So we should maintain our grip and make sure that we remain in our side. Let's give opposition to take their role fully. Let's not be part of, people who engage issues on the side of the opposition. So I think that way is the way I think my thinking, because the only time that I think the president has to say that, and there was a bit of conversation around, is the time when they were electing East African Legislative Assemblies.
Okay. Let me hear, as we wind up, Wakili, the PGM, the meeting itself, a number of issues were raised, and One of them is also the creation of the office of the official opposition leader. I would like you to comment on that as we wind up.
Yes, I think let me start from the official opposition leader office. I think we need it. Honestly, we need it because we need proper checks. Because when you only have members of parliament who have been elected under the opposition appearing there without their leader, and the leader is out here making noise in the streets, there's a disconnect in terms of issuing of proper instructions. Sometimes you find some of the members of parliament actually go switch sides. So, but when you have your leader watching you the way you are voting, you will have some kind of discipline and decorum. So that is, I think, something which we need to have, and I highly recommend the president because he wants to have that. You know, that should have been coming. The push should have been coming from the opposition, but it seems the president is well ahead of them, has stolen their carpet from under their feet, and he's telling them, guys, instead of being in the streets, come here and check me from inside, because this way it matters most. So, and that would be a very positive move. So that one we need to comment, and we hope it passes through. But there's this particular element which I tend to admire in our president, in that he leads from the front. He never waits for things to come to him. He seems to understand what the Kenyan political atmosphere is. He goes ahead and does things beforehand, like that one which we've just described. Then the aspect of calling his troops to order, he has realized, you know, for the 3 months he's realized the comments being made from his side. He's realized that these guys don't know where we're headed. They don't know that we have a very long journey, which if you keep throwing a stone to every dog which is barking you from the neighborhood, we might not get there, because we need to move fast. We need to know what our agenda is, what we need to deliver to Kenyans, and we be able to push for policies in that particular direction. So whoever is throwing stones, let him find us moving. We will be able to see the results at the end of the day. And that is basically the mantra which a leader should be able to have, to be able to give traction to a country, especially Kenya, which is very fragile, and things can get out of hand very fast.
And talking about things can get fragile, Edwin Onkundi talks about demonstration in Africa will remain a vocabulary. Demonstrations will never be peaceful in Africa. Just trying to say that we should not be doing this. And others people, somebody's concurring. Simon Mutiga says, yeah, it's true, but even so, the organizers have hidden agenda because they do it for their own relevance. Not in any case for common man. It's part of their reinventing. Good example, Kenya. Somebody else says the interest first, kurudisha pesa walitumia kwa campaign. All right, those are some of the sentiments that we have in countries. Kenya continues to suffer for their own interest. Somebody has raised an issue. Grace Otto also says, leo mkona game gani KBC Channel 1? Leo ni mapumziko. An interesting game yesterday, gentlemen.
Yes,
Morocco is a trailblazer, if you ask me, and giving us something that we can believe that if we can beat the 2010 champions, everything is possible. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of our conversation. But Daktari, we are talking about the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and you are a doctor of psychology. Maybe you can, in 2 seconds, mention something in regards to the 16 days of gender activism.
Thank you very much. I think I'll just say, I'll be very brief, since we have another show. First and foremost, mental health issues have become very rampant. We in Kenya, we are not appreciating that actually we have mental issues. And in other countries, people look at the behaviors, the personality traits of individuals and assess, go for assessment and know why certain person conduct certain, come up with certain behaviors. So gender-based violence has become traditionally something that is normal, but it is never normal. You realize that in my study, I looked at effect of personality traits on gender-based, on domestic gender-based violence among prisoners in prisons in Kiambu County, and the outcome looks like, 2 of the 5 personality traits are the culprit of why many people commit commit, domestic gender-based violence.
Okay.
So as we look at this week's, activism, we must appreciate that actually gender-based violence is real, and this is as a result of mental issues, and we must, try to find out a solution in which we execute, support for all those guys that are affected. For example, you'll find someone...
Okay. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll talk about it another time.
Isaac Hassan, who is a doctor and also a politician and also a leadership and governance expert. And just next to him, Gibson Gisore. Always a pleasure having you, Wakili. He's an advocate and a constitutional lawyer. Thank you so much for joining us for that debate. But on the next around 30 minutes, we will be talking about the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. That discussion in the next 1 minute. Let's have that commercial break and then come back. Gentlemen,
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.